Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Takeyh and Dr. Pollack, you heard in Senator McCain's opening statement the quote by David Petraeus. Do you generally agree with General Petraeus in that statement?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, Senator.
Asking Dr. Rand.
I'm sorry?
Do you generally agree, Dr. Rand?
Please.
Sure. As I said, I think there are different sources of the threats.
Yeah, all right. Not much has been said about the negotiations that are taking place right now, and I'll get back to that in a minute after asking this initial question. But when we had that, what I thought was really a great speech that Netanyahu made when he was over here and was talking about the negotiations, what are your feelings about his, how close to target was he on the negotiations specifically when he made the joint speech to our House and the Senate?
I think actually, if you look at the content of the speech, Prime Minister moved from his previous positions of total dismantlement of Iranian nuclear program in a pragmatic way. He's often accused of being a maximalist and so on. He actually adjusted his own previous prohibitions in order to come closer to what the 5+1 are negotiating. And he established some benchmarks, namely that scope of the Iranian nuclear program should be conditioned on its behavior in the region, terrorism, and so on. I don't think that's what's happening in the negotiations. They're maintaining him pretty much on the nuclear issue. So in that sense, his attempt to link Iran's nuclear ambitions to its regional ambitions is not something that's being upheld by the 5+1 in their negotiations. It may be sensible, but it's not happening.
Yeah, Dr. Pollack, I'm just talking about his statement to the joint session, not since the election, and some of the things are perhaps a little bit different. What do you think about his analysis at that time?
I think that the Prime Minister exaggerated a number of different points. And while, again, I think that there is truth and logic in them, we also need to be asking the question of what is practical. As Dr. Takeyh just pointed out, I think that the idea of linking the nuclear deal to Iranian behavior elsewhere is problematic. And here I would suggest that I think that both critics on the left and right are making too much of the deal. I actually would suggest that we need to think about the deal exactly the way the Iranians are. The Iranians are portraying this deal as a simple transaction, limits on their nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. And I think they've made it very clear they're not interested in anything beyond it. Certainly the Supreme Leader is not. I'm sure that Foreign Minister Zarif would love a rapprochement, but I do not think that that is in the offing because of the remarks of the Supreme Leader. I think that we need to do the same. I think that we need to recognize that there is utility, exactly as Senator Reid's questions raised, there is utility in having a deal that will provide some degree of limits on Iran's nuclear ambitions. I will not disagree with Colonel Harvey that I think the Iranians would like at some point to have a nuclear weapon, but I think that they have made the decision that they do not need an actual weapon at this point in time. And what I'm looking for is a deal that reinforces that inhibition for as long as possible. If that is the case, I think that that does remove a very important element of the problems in the Middle East, including those faced by Israel. But we shouldn't assume that our problems with Iran go away once the nuclear deal is signed, and I think it's a mistake for us to be calibrating our responses elsewhere in the region under the assumption that we're going to have a kinder, gentler Iran after a nuclear deal.
Yeah, before this hearing, I mentioned to you I was going to ask the question about the prediction that was made back in 2007 that by 2015 that they would have, Iran would have a weapon and a delivery system. Here it is, 2015. And now you're saying that you're not convinced that they ultimately want the weapon. Is this what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is I think they do ultimately want the weapon. I think that they have decided in the short term not to get it immediately.
Okay.
Because we've created very important disincentives for them to do so.
Do you think our intelligence back in 2007 was accurate? And
I don't think that it was wrong, and I think that that we've look. As an old intel analyst, I've seen this movie any number of times, Senator. I can remember predictions about when Iraq would get a nuclear weapon, and they keep moving and they keep moving. And we need to assume that the Iranians have some kind of a program behind the scenes that has probably been making progress.
Well, the same with North Korea and others who are always making these predictions. And Dr. Takeyh, what do you think about what they said back in 2007 and their intentions, and how close are they today?
The intentions of the Iranians to have a, well, just,
That by 2015 they would have a weapon and a delivery system.
I think to some extent that's the fact that that objective was not, that timeline was not met, is a testimony to success of export control, sabotage, and sanctions, and what international community has managed to do in terms of imposing costs on Iranian calculation. The Islamic Republic does want a nuclear weapon. Two weeks ago, their former negotiator, who is the current representative of the Supreme Leader to the Supreme National Security Council, Saeed Jalili, said in an interview, in a talk at the university, that Americans have all these weapons and they're objecting the fact that we want to get enough material for one bomb.
Well,
that was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
He's not a former official. He's the current representative of the Supreme Leader to the Supreme National Security Council that makes all the decisions regarding nuclear strategy as well as domestic issues. No, the question is not intentions. The question is, can the international community provide obstacles to that intentions? And a deal can impose restraints, but can also serve as a pathway. There are problems in terms of a sunset clause, upon expiration of which Iran can have an industrial-sized nuclear program similar to Japan and Netherlands. That's a dash to a bomb. There is a problem about the kind of technologies that they will have is a residual program. There is problems in terms of other aspects of this deal. So a deal can be both a restraint that delays the program, but also a pathway that makes the march toward that weapon more legal, legitimate, and therefore effective. So it's illegal and dangerous, legal and longer.
Yeah. Well, I'm running out of time here, and I wanted to get to what's happening right now in Yemen, because it's been a strategy that the president's talked about for a long time. We do air power, then we let the other guys get on the ground. And in fact, this is a direct quote. He said, "This strategy of taking out terrorists who threaten us while supporting partners on the front lines is one that we have successfully pursued in Yemen." Any comments on Yemen?
Sir, I think one of the issues we've had is focusing almost exclusively on a counterterrorism approach in, say, the Horn of Africa and in Yemen, and not looking at some of the wider opportunities, more opportunities we have to engage and build up security forces and partnerships in a way to solidify governments and address some of the other issues that we could have earlier. I think right now the problem in Yemen for us is, where are they headed? It's a large population, about 30 million. It's radicalized. You've got Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, Houthis backed by Shia there. It's not really a strategic threat to us or the Bab el-Mandeb Straits, but from a Saudi perspective in the Gulf, it's very, very concerning because of the radicalization and the terrorism that can emanate from there.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to get some questions for the record, so I assume we're going to leave that open because I think it is significant. We have all this talent here. We need to extract as much as we can. Thank you.